So one of the things we've been, I think, over the years perfected is to make sure that as we turn on that sales and marketing tap, that we've got the infrastructure in place. The other neat thing is we actually make the plates, the ELISA plates that we run these tests on ourselves. So we control the whole value chain. So in this world, when everyone's been talking about tariffs and, what's going to cost X from Y from wherever, we've owned everything. The only thing that we buy in is these plastic ELISA plates from Maine. So as long as Maine aren't going to suddenly slap a tariff on Massachusetts, I think we're in pretty good shape. So again, it's a minor thing, but it just means we can control that value chain. And think during COVID and post-COVID, when the accountants had run the world, and so no one had any stock of anything anywhere, we were in a great position because we control that value chain, and it enabled us to really continue our growth and enable us to kind of make sure that we could support our customer base as it grew at the same time as well.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Business of Learning podcast. My name is Joan Camargo, and my guest here today is James White, who is the founder and CEO of KBMO Diagnostics. James, thank you so much for being here today. I'm really excited to have this conversation.
No, my pleasure. And thank you for your time. And thank you for the due diligence on getting the KBMO correct. So that was you nailed it.
All the brain power was used
Exactly.
we just used well.
Well,
James, thank you so much, man. It's incredible to have this conversation. I think you have a little bit of a different company than most guests that I've had on. So I would love for you to start off by telling everyone a little bit more about the company, what you guys do, who you are, and anything else you'd like to share.
Perfect. So we're a reference lab, but we're kind of slightly unusual because we've developed the test ourselves. So lots of people, they'll buy reagents in from third parties and they'll run tests and they'll have some fancy marketing and kind of make sure they're in front of as many people as they can. We basically developed this test with the help of my technical founder, a gentleman called Dr. Brent Dorval, whose not insignificant claim to fame was he invented the first rapid HIV diagnostic. And so what he did, he said, look, we need to have a better food sensitivity test. And so what we're looking at is a food sensitivity test that looks at multiple pathways to make sure we can really help the patients work out which of the foods they're consuming are leading to an inflammatory response. And inflammation is basically the root cause of all disease states. And so it's a really cool way of, for listeners and patients alike, this is one of the few tests where you'll go in and see a physician and there's no judgment attached to it. So normally you go into the doctor and he goes, oh my gosh, you're overweight, or we've run these numbers, your lifestyle's atrocious. This one is very different because we're just saying, look, wow, that's really interesting. Through this very cool test that was developed by this brilliant scientist, and that's now been we've developed even further. We now have worked out of the foods that you're consuming, which ones cause you inflammation. And because we have this multiple pathway approach, it eliminates the false positives, which means, unlike some of the others, which give you 20 plus foods, you're like going, oops, bread and water today, actually no bread. The idea with this one is to say, look, let's just zero in on what causes you inflammation. If you can eliminate that from your diet, then what you'll generally see is a reduction in the symptoms that you present. It's a really cool thing for patients because, as I say, what we've tried to do is make this a very approachable thing because, again, I'm sure we've all been in there. You go and see a physician. We're a bit like deer in the headlights. Oh, my God, he's sitting me with a ton of numbers, all these words, which I'm sure if I'd been better at school and got a PhD, I might understand. But this way, it's kind of like, let's keep it simple. Let's try and give actionable information with some tools that make it easy for a patient to be compliant if they so choose. Obviously, that's up to everyone. But the reality is we try and make it so the patient can be compliant. And we've devised it all around that we provide that information to the providers who then work with the patients to kind of get that done. So
awesome.
That was probably a long explanation for
No, that's great. It's great. Thank you so much for that. There's two things that I wanted to ask about that. Okay. One is actually from one of my personal experiences, which is I think would be great to highlight because I have a feeling a lot of people might have gone through something similar. And then the first thing that I'll ask is, does it always have to be access through a physician, through a doctor, or is there something that people can just get further for themselves as well?
Yeah, so we make it through providers just because, again, we're a small but growing pretty quickly company. And so our approach is let's work with that provider base that we've created over a number of years now. And then that way it's easier for us to educate them to then educate the
Yeah,
patient.
it funnels down
Yeah,
easily.
exactly,
Yeah, that
exactly.
makes sense. Thank you. Yeah,
So
thank you for sharing
that's
that.
how we've done it.
Yeah.
But again, if anyone who's listening kind of calls into the company or goes to our website, and asks to see, can we get a provider? We've got over 10,000 of them now, so we're in a great position to be able to kind of link you up with a provider nearby, or some kind of telehealth model, which obviously post-COVID is a lot more popular than pre-COVID.
Yes.
Pre-COVID,
Yeah.
people would have looked at me, scratched their head, going, "What the hell would I do that for?" Now that's a great idea. Why wouldn't we do that? So
Yeah,
something it's
the world has changed to better in many, many
I
ways.
think so.
That's awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and then the other thing that I wanted to ask is, I think it's very important to also highlight the difference between sensitivity and allergy, because I think so many people can have that same connotation for those words, even though they are completely different. So can you share a little bit more about how it's different from just finding out what foods you're allergic to, as opposed to the sensitivity side
Yeah,
of
and
things?
that's a great question. And again, I didn't want to bore them too much up front with that, but I'm glad you brought it up because it is very important. So
Yeah.
an allergy is both of these reactions are an immunological response. So it's your body's response to these foods. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if it's a true allergy, the reactions can be very severe. So think peanut. And the other thing is, not only are they very severe, but they're immediate. So again, there's no delay to it. Whereas a food sensitivity, it's an allergy is looking at a thing called IgE. A food sensitivity looks at a thing called IgG and IgA. So it's a slightly different pathway, and also it's less immediate. So the impact can come up to 72 hours after you've consumed it. So if you can all imagine that, if you can remember maybe even where you've been over the last 72 hours, let alone what you've consumed, that
Yeah.
makes it much harder. And so that's why I would argue it really lends itself to be tested, because again, if it's an immediate reaction, you'd eat it and go, "Oh, I ate that peanut, I feel lousy. Maybe I won't be eating peanuts again." But if it's over a 72-hour time period,
So
it's really
difficult.
tough to work out. I'll give a
Yeah.
great example. I was dealing with a doctor recently, and he said, "Well, I'm not going to bother running this test, James, because I know every morning I have eggs, and it's eggs is the problem." And he said, "But I'll humor you because you seem like a nice guy. I'll run the test on myself, and let's see what results come back." So we reviewing the results with him. Eggs in the dark green, which means no reaction. 4+ in the red is orange. And so I said to him, "I'm just going to hazard a guess. Do you have a glass of orange juice every morning with your eggs?" And the guy goes, "Oh my God, I do." So that just is an example of like, oh my gosh, it's not, you think you know what it is, but it's always worth testing to make sure that you're not guessing, but you're testing to make sure
Yeah.
that you've got that information. So
Yeah.
again, just a small aside in terms of, an example of how it can be. We can always
No,
very
sure.
convinced what it is, but unless you test for it, then you're never really certain in terms of what might
Yeah,
be going on.
100%. And I think the worst part of it is if you don't know what it is and
Yeah,
there's something happening,
exactly.
and like there's just that
Yeah.
that uncertainty 24/7. You're like, oh, I've eaten this and I've stopped that and I tried this and I tried that, but then nothing comes of it. It's like this feeling of frustration that can even come around for not figuring it out. So thank you for sharing that
And I
story as
think
well.
the other problem is, when we go to a traditional doctor, they're very segmented. So again, you'll go and see a cardiovascular doctor who'll tell you all about your heart. You'll go and see the gastroenterologist who'll tell you, but none of them are actually joining the dots and recognizing that your body's an amazing thing and it's all interconnected. And so I think that's one of the key things here is that, by looking at this, the symptoms from the inflammation caused by your food are many and varied. And so, as I said, they're not as severe, but they could be linked with migraines. They could be joint pain. It could be skin related. Definitely, it could be gut related in terms of what's going on there as well. Obviously,
Yes.
but again, it's your body is an amazing thing at showing inflammation. Like I said, it could be skin rashes, joint pain. And increasingly, the research is showing links between leaky gut and leaky brain. And so, again, brain related issues, anxiety, depression.
Yeah.
And in fact, we did a clinical study, I'm going to age myself, probably 15 years ago now. But what happened was we did the study. We took 35 patients. It was just as I was taking over the business. So let's just make sure we've spoken to the 3 doctors who are running it. They were all, unbelievably excited about the results and clinical outcomes they were seeing. So let's do a clinical study just to show that. So we took 35 patients who'd run 2 tests over a 12-month period and basically wanted to see what symptoms they'd had and had they improved or not. And what was really remarkable was the number that were linked with brain-related issues, so anxiety, depression, and things like that. Obviously, the gut-related things
Sure.
and migraines and things like that were there as well. But it was really like 15 years ago, we're like, do we say that these symptoms are leaking to brain-related issues, or do we just kind of say it's gut-related? Today, if you speak to physicians, they go, well, of course that was the case. Trust me, 15 years ago, they'd have wheeled me off on a gurney and gone, this guy's lost his brain, lost not only his brain, but his marbles. So the idea here was to say, it's really fascinating to see, how all these things are related. And, Hippocrates, 400 BC, all disease begins in the gut. So in some regards, you could say, well, we haven't really progressed very much, but I try and take a more positive view and say, well, now there's some really cool tools that we can use to help analyze those things in a more effective manner as well.
Yeah, for sure. And that's so awesome. Thank you for sharing that as well, because I think even for myself, I have a bachelor's in kinesiology. So I have done a lot of study when it comes to health and all these things, but sometimes we forget that everything is intertwined in the body. It's not just this isolated thing. It's your gut is one thing and your brain's another thing and your muscles are other things. Like they are all working in conjunction. And especially for someone who might not have as much of a low education that I have, they might not have that full understanding as well, and it becomes more difficult. And I'd love to understand too. Thank you for sharing that once again, James. But I'd love to understand here in terms of the business side. So just shifting our conversation a little bit, what are some of the challenges that arise when it comes to maintaining the growth of the company? I would assume that a lot of times it can be even the awareness that something like this exists for physicians to provide for all of the patients that they treat. So tell me a little bit more about what stands in the way of achieving some of the goals you guys have. What are some of those obstacles, some of those hurdles as well?
Yeah, I think some of the key things that we've tried to kind of zero in on as a company is, so kind of core tenets is, let's make sure we've always got world-class science. So again, we're the only patented food sensitivity test on the market. Let's make sure we've got the appropriate infrastructure by people in terms of making sure we've got, hired the right amount of people and all that good stuff, and made sure that we're kind of almost hiring in advance of the inflow of samples. And so the sample type, again, just to kind of quickly overview that, it's a finger stick. So there's literally like a blotting card I've got on here in front of me. They fill 5 drops of blood on here. It's not, there we go. Hopefully you see the 5. The finger stick, and that gets sent into us. Cool thing is it's stable for 30 days. And so we've got samples coming in from all around the world into our lab in Boston. But we also have labs in Mexico City, Chile, Brazil, China, London, and the head office here in Boston. And so the neat thing is, as I say, we wanted to make sure as we grow that we've got the infrastructure in place that we can run these samples in a timely manner. We give everyone a turnaround time of a specific time of 7 to 10 business days. So one of the things we've been, I think, over the years perfected is to make sure that as we turn on that sales and marketing tap, that we've got the infrastructure in place. The other neat thing is we actually make the plates, the ELISA plates that we run these tests on ourselves. So we control the whole value chain. So, in this world, when everyone's been talking about tariffs and, what's going to cost X from Y from wherever, we own everything. The only thing that we buy in is these plastic ELISA plates from Maine. So as long as Maine aren't going to suddenly slap a tariff on Massachusetts, I think we're in pretty good shape. So again, it's a minor thing, but it just means that we can control that value chain. And think, during COVID and post-COVID, when, the accountants had run the world and so no one had any stock of anything anywhere, we were in a great position because we control that value chain, and it enabled us to really continue our growth and enable us to kind of make sure that we could support our customer base as it grew at the same time as well.
No, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that as well. And I think it's important to highlight the importance of systematizing everything and making sure everything is seamless. It's frictionless. It doesn't have the potholes on the driveway that allow these things to just happen as we were going back to the body in conjunction with one another, as opposed to just the isolation, this thing breaks and then everything else collapses after that as well. And you said the words in there, once we turn on the taps for sales and marketing. Tell me a little bit. It's interesting for me to hear because when we were having our first conversation as well, we dove a little bit into that, but nobody was there to listen. So, so here we are as well. Tell me a little bit more about that side of things as well. So the infrastructure, the systems, the processes, phenomenal. Once that's down patch, then you can turn on those taps. Is there any challenges or obstacles that comes when turning on those taps as well?
No, I mean, so we've been at this for nearly 14 years now. So we've been doing it for a little while. So what we've done is we've kind of, I guess, tried to perfect the model. I mean, you're always perfecting it. Nothing's ever finished. But the idea was to say, let's focus on trying to see these physicians. Initially, we'd go out and we'd be seeing them door to door, going into doctors' offices. And as probably most of you as patients recognize, very few doctors work 5 days a week anymore. They do 3. And so they're harder and harder to see. And so if you can think that from a salesperson standpoint, the idea of, having them there 5 days a week and they may have some time to have a chat with you, that's becoming less and less. So we changed the model dramatically. So we attend a lot more trade shows where it gives us an opportunity to have a really good one-on-one conversations with our physicians and provide the providers we use. So I call them providers because we're a broad church. So the idea is, if they're I always kind of define them, if they're the 1% of providers who care about your nutrition, then we're up to work with them. So again, think about people who are looking at what you're consuming and recognizing the impact that has on your body. And so I always like the analogy, when you go and buy a new car, they tell you which oil or which gas to put in that to make sure that engine runs effectively.
Yes.
What this test is in essence doing is the same thing. We're running your blood to work out which of the foods and colorings and additives that you're consuming are actually going to impact the effectiveness of how well your body can run. And so that's how we've kind of worked it. And what we've found is, we'll say the 3 tenets of what we try to do: world-class science, the right people and infrastructure, and thirdly, we love investing in R&D and but based off those conversations with those providers to say, what tests is it that you want to make sure that above and beyond that food sensitivity, it kind of makes sense for us to kind of be adding those, given that we're in the fortunate position, we're kind of like a 10,000 client startup in essence. So if we're going to launch a new product, it's got to be something that those guys go, phew, James, you solved my problem, because we had this test that was out there. It's kind of lousy. We weren't very happy with it. I can see what you've done to address the issues that we were seeing with it, to make sure that's addressed. So a great example of that is we developed a gut barrier panel, because again, we're all aware of leaky gut. We're not all really sure what it means, but we're aware that leaky gut is one of those phrases. And, you go to a traditional doctor, you'll go, well, I don't believe in it. And you'll go, well, that's interesting. I'm double over and I'm in the bathroom 5 times a day. So something's going on. So the idea is to say, how do we link food sensitivity and leaky gut together? So we developed a panel of markers to kind of have at the same time, because it was a bit of a chicken and egg. Which comes first? Is it the leaky gut or the food sensitivities? And when I was out talking to providers, they said, look, James, we don't run this food sensitivity on everyone because we think they've got leaky gut. And so they were kind of guessing, not testing. But in their defense, there wasn't a good way of measuring both of them at the same time. So our approach was, let's combine them. Let's put them together. So we're giving that provider the information to say, does this patient have leaky gut? Or is it just the food sensitivities which are causing the problem? And by doing that, it gives them so much more information that they can be so much more powerful when they're reviewing your results to say, okay, cool, we've got leaky gut or we haven't. If we have, let's make sure we put you on some supplements and kind of work that through. One of the other things we've done, we've partnered with a whole number of supplement companies and the professional end to say, look, come up with some protocols that help bringing all this stuff together. And I think that's one of the things from a sales and marketing thing we've tried to do more and more of, is how do you combine all these disparate groups together? So the science and the testing, the physicians, and then the supplementation to make it seamless to go, okay, this is how I'm going to introduce this into my practice.
Yeah. And then there's always that positive feedback loop, right? Hey, there's a constant improvement, taking this feedback and applying it intentionally, as opposed to just slotting things in that, as you said, the 10,000 people, which probably was going to keep growing and growing, doesn't actually want. Thank you for sharing that. That's really, really cool. James, I have one final question for you here. This has been awesome. And this question is actually not a question from me. It's a question from our last guest to you, and they had no idea who you were. So here's the question. You ready for it?
I'm ready for it.
If you had enough budget, call it unlimited budget, who is the one person, the one talent you'd like to hire, famous or not?
Interesting. I'd argue we're a private company, so I would say we kind of have got unlimited budget because we're not run by a finance group that go, well, my fund's closing next week, so you can't have any money, or public, well, I've got to do it quarterly. I would say we're pretty fortunate that we've gone out and identified the key talents already. So I'm not looking for Kim Kardashian to run the tests and kind of go out there or anything like that. So I think my approach is, although we've had lots of famous people run the test. So
Sure.
for me, I think the approach we have is it's a team effort. Let's keep developing the team and listening to what the team wants in terms of if we have any major gaps, we'll fill it. And so that's been the approach we've done. And actually almost talent as well. We've done the same thing. If there's some good people that we know and we've been working with, if we can bring them in, we bring them in. So it's not necessarily, well, God, we lost someone, so we need to bring them up. We've got an amazing retention. It's been we're lucky that, people kind of seem to work with us for lots and lots of years. So it's more been, how do we add more people as we grow and identify issues? Maybe I'm not as smart as the previous guest who said, he's got a crystal ball. He said, let's hire this person because this will, put us on a different trajectory. We're really comfortable with the trajectory we're on. We're really comfortable with the projects we've got coming through and the growth rates we've had. So I'm not, maybe it's a poor response, but there's no one, I don't think, I'm not sure if in any industry there's a silver bullet or, even in a soccer team, even if you pick the best striker in the world, if you haven't got the right midfield and defense, it doesn't really matter. So I'd argue it's kind of, we're very fortunate. We've got a really strong team. And again,
that's awesome.
That's, I think, the approach we've taken on it. But
that's a great answer. That's a great answer. No, that's awesome. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to cancel my call with Kim K that I booked for you. So that's unfortunate.
Exactly. She's not going to do it anymore. Well.
No, but that's awesome, James. Thank you so much for this, man. This has been such an incredible chat. So, so insightful, especially for, I think, for people who listen who sometimes might not have the plethora of knowledge that you have in this space as well. So thank you for sharing all that. Where should people go if they want to learn a little bit more about you and, of course, a little bit more about
I mean, and again, the last thing I've got to tell you what KBMO stands for. So K is Catherine, my wife. B is Ben, my oldest son. M, Max, my middle son. And we saved the best to last. Olivia, my daughter, is the O. So again, we all have bosses. So again, that's my 4 bosses. But if you go to our website, which is kbmodiagnostics.com, then go on there and then you'll be in great shape to kind of get more information about the testing. And again, as we add more tests and kind of more things come through, and if you go to the info at KBMO Diagnostics, and say, look, I'm interested in getting the test run, we can make sure we line you up with, providers in and around your area. And as I say, we've got distribution all around the world. So if I'm sure you've got a more than just a US listenership. So if you have, there's not many countries we can't deal with in terms of getting your results and answers.
Amazing. James, again, thank you so much for your time. For everyone that's listening, and if you want to check anything out, it's all here in the description. And if you're still listening and you want to hear more conversations like this, please hit the subscribe button and I will see you on the next episode. James, thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.